The 911 operator sounded utterly drained when she said, "Sir, this is the third call about this in 1 week. We've already explained, living outside an HOA isn't a crime." Behind her, I could hear Patricia Thornwell, our neighborhood's self-anointed dictator, screeching about civic responsibility and protecting property values. The patrol officer on my porch looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, standing in the rain directing traffic, maybe. I handed him my usual packet, the deed to my house, the original 1978 subdivision plat, and a laminated county letter that spelled out in bold letters that my address, 427 Maple Ridge Drive, had never been folded into the Honeysuckle Heights HOA. Patricia loomed just behind him, purple-faced and gripping her clipboard as though it were a sacred text. "He's lying," she shouted. "Every house in Honeysuckle Heights is under the association. Look at his RV in the driveway. Look at the weeds. Look at the dandelions." The officer let out the kind of sigh only sheer exhaustion produces, then turned to her. "Ma'am, for the last time, if his property isn't within your HOA, you don't have any authority over him." That's when Patricia made the misstep that would undo everything. She jabbed a perfectly manicured finger toward me and declared, "I'll prove he's lying. And when I do, he'll owe 5 years of back dues plus penalties." I smiled, calm as ever. "Careful what you wish for, Patricia." She had no idea she'd just opened a fight she couldn't possibly win. "My name's Marcus Chin. I'm a contract software developer who works from home. I bought this house precisely because it wasn't part of an HOA. The previous owner, Frank, a kind old man, had fought like hell when the HOA formed in 1982. He carved his lot out of their reach, won, and passed that independence down to me when I bought the place 3 years back. Patricia, however, had spent the last 7 years reigning over Honeysuckle Heights as president, ruling with the kind of passive-aggressive tyranny that made neighbors dread her pastel violation notices. She was famous for measuring grass with a ruler, finding anyone with bird feeders outside the approved shade of beige, and even once proposing that children should be banned from riding bikes after 5 p.m. because they disturbed the evening atmosphere. Her grudge against me began day one, when I parked my 20-foot RV in my driveway. She greeted me with a welcome basket that included HOA bylaws, a fee schedule, and a syrupy letter about community standards. When I told her I wasn't under the HO, her expression froze like a frozen laptop screen. From that moment, making my life miserable became her personal crusade. She tried it all: anonymous notes taped to my mailbox, neighborhood watch groups that somehow only watched my house, and endless gossip about how I was hurting property values. The funny part? Most neighbors envied my freedom, my unregulated shed colors, my ability to keep chickens, my compost pile that didn't need permission. At first it was subtle, lavender-scented letters in pastel envelopes about how my choices damaged neighborhood harmony. Then came her self-published newsletter, Honeysuckle Highlights, where a weekly problem property column mysteriously always featured photos from my yard. Meetings were scheduled at times I couldn't avoid, with the only agenda item being boundary disputes. When all that failed, she escalated to fake official notices she slipped under my door at dawn. Alleged infractions included things like excessive dandelion propagation, unauthorized butterfly attraction through non-compliant flowering plants, and my personal favorite, hostile architecture aesthetic. That one I actually framed and hung in my office. Her obsession spiraled further. She called city departments on me constantly. In 2 months, code enforcement visited 17 times. Each inspector arrived, looked through the records, confirmed everything was in order, and left increasingly irritated at having their time wasted. She called animal control on my legal chickens, the fire marshal about my perfectly safe shed, and even the health department about my compost bin. The last straw came when she called 911 and claimed I was running an illegal business because delivery trucks stopped by. Officers showed up, realized the business was me receiving Amazon packages, and officially warned her about abusing emergency services. But Patricia didn't stop. Oh no, she escalated. At the January HOA meeting, held in my next-door neighbor's yard so I'd have to hear it, she revealed her big play. She'd pulled $30,000 out of the HOA's reserve fund to hire a law firm. Their mission? To prove my exemption was fraudulent, that Frank had faked documents decades ago, and that my property was inside HOA jurisdiction after all. Patricia was convinced she'd found discrepancies in the old surveys. That was the moment she declared financial war. Patricia ran the numbers and declared I owed $43,000 in back dues, fines, and interest. The board, too intimidated to challenge her, rubber-stamped her plan without a whisper of dissent. What she didn't realize was that my brother-in-law, James, a top real estate attorney in the state and a specialist in HOA disputes, was staying at my house that weekend. From my deck, he overheard her grand announcement. James smirked at me and murmured, "She just made a career-ending mistake." Her lawsuit was a train wreck dressed up in legal language. She accused me of fraud, conspiracy, and even hinted that I had bribed county officials to protect my exemption. She demanded immediate payment of the supposed back dues, full compliance with HOA rules, and punitive damages for what she called intentional infliction of community distress. The papers were served to me at a neighborhood barbecue Patricia had arranged specifically to humiliate me in front of as many people as possible. I took the packet, thanked the process server, and went right back to turning hot dogs on a grill. Patricia loudly proclaimed to the crowd that justice was finally on her side. What she didn't see was James quietly assembling our counterattack. Not only did we have airtight documentation proving my property's exemption, but James also tracked down sworn statements from Frank, the developer's son, and 3 former board members who all confirmed the same thing. My lot was never part of Honeysuckle Heights. Even better, he uncovered that Patricia had broken state laws in her use of HOA funds and funneled HOA contracts to her cousin's landscaping company. By March, the showdown had made it into court. Patricia showed up in full battle mode, flanked by pricey lawyers and the board members she'd pressured into supporting her. I walked in with James and a banker's box overflowing with evidence. Judge Sandra Mitchell, looking like someone who'd presided over far too many petty HOA wars, took her seat. Patricia's attorney burned 20 minutes arguing about survey ambiguities and claiming the exemption was improperly granted. Then James took the floor. He laid out the facts in neat, irrefutable order. The 1978 plat map, the 1982 HOA charter that explicitly excluded my lot, and 40 years of tax records that backed it all up. Judge Mitchell looked ready to dismiss the case right there, until James unleashed the real bomb. He presented proof that Patricia had misused HOA funds for her vendetta, bypassed her own board's required approvals, and fabricated violation notices for property she had no jurisdiction over. The judge's expression went from weary to intrigued to visibly angry. She tossed the HOA's lawsuit out with prejudice, meaning they could never try again. Then she ordered a full audit of the HOA's finances and referred Patricia's behavior to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. But the fireworks weren't finished. James had filed a counterclaim on my behalf for harassment, defamation, and abuse of process. We had it all. Security footage of Patricia sneaking onto my property at night to take pictures, recordings of her slandering me during HOA meetings, and a thick file of her bogus complaints to city departments. The judge ruled decisively in my favor. The verdict was brutal. Patricia personally owed me $75,000 in damages, and the HOA as an organization was hit with another $50,000 for enabling her antics. Here's where it gets juicy. The HOA's insurance refused to cover any of it, since Patricia's actions were classified as deliberate and malicious. Suddenly, the entire HOA teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Emergency meetings were held. Within 2 days, Patricia was unanimously voted off the board, her closest allies abandoning her without hesitation to save their own skins. The desperate board came crawling to me with a proposal. They'd pay the judgment in installments but needed new revenue to stay afloat and avoid slapping the neighborhood with massive special assessments that would send every homeowner into revolt. Conveniently, I happen to own a rental property across town I've been thinking about unloading. Instead of selling my rental outright, I pitched the HOA a different idea: lease it from me for use as their new management office, since Patricia had always run things from her living room. The condition? They'd pay 3 times the going rate for exactly 5 years, the same length of time Patricia had spent tormenting me. Desperate to keep their organization afloat, the board signed a lease within a week. Now they cut me a check for $8,500 every month for a building worth less than $3,000 in rent. To cover it, they gutted the community budget, canceling the annual picnic, scrapping the holiday decorating contest, and scaling back landscaping services. Every homeowner knows exactly why their neighborhood perks vanished, and Patricia's name is practically a curse word. With the damages I collected, I treated myself to some upgrades guaranteed to haunt Patricia's dreams. A blazing purple shed, garden gnomes painted in violently mismatched colors, wind chimes that switch melodies every hour. All 100% legal on my blessedly non-HOA lot. For the finishing touch, I hired Patricia's cousin's landscaping company, the same one she'd funneled HOA contracts to for my own yard. They were eager for the work after losing the HOA deal in the fraud scandal. Patricia, never knowing when to quit, made one last stand. She tried to get back on the HOA board the following year. She held campaign meetings in her garage, plastered the neighborhood with flyers predicting property value collapse, and even launched a petition to somehow retroactively drag my house into the HOA. On election night, she delivered a dramatic 40-minute speech about declining standards and the need for firm leadership. When the ballots were tallied, she had exactly 3 votes out of 147, hers and, apparently, 2 relatives. The new board wasted no time. Their first resolution barred anyone ever convicted of misusing HOA funds from holding office again. Meanwhile, the district attorney filed charges, 3 counts of fraud and 2 counts of fiduciary abuse. Patricia eventually cut a plea deal, 2 years probation, 50 hours of community service teaching ethics and governance of all things, and a $10,000 fine. When the sentence was read, Patricia went pale and whispered, "But I was only trying to preserve standards." The judge didn't miss a beat. "Your standards, Ms. Thornwell, were criminal."